Well, I'm not qualified to introduce Angelo, but I will tell you that Angelo came to my rescue, as I said before, because Doug couldn't make it. And Angelo is going to show us how he prepares a blank. And then, based upon the time, he's going to turn that on the lathe. And depending upon what kind of progress we make, I think you even talked about some wet sanding, but I don't know if you're prepared for the wet sanding.
I am prepared for wet sanding.
So I'll give it to Barry, or to Angelo. And thank you again.
Yeah, no problem. Well, if we want to talk about how I prepare blanks for turning, it's going to be a real short demo. But I basically use either the chainsaw or the bandsaw to cut the pieces in half. Generally, I store them with anchor seal. There's also some greenwood sealer over there that I brought that I don't use anymore. But this one is anchor seal with sprinkles. And,
Party.
if I'm not worried about if I'm going to turn it within a week or two, sprinkles will work just fine. The next step to prepare something that's going to last a little longer, and I know a lot of you guys will use plastic wrap. This is stretch wrap. And finally, I'm going to store it for a year. Anchor seal, lay the aluminum foil into the wet anchor seal. And then I use the tape because usually these would be stored outside. And if I don't tape them down, then the aluminum foil will weather off.
Do you also wrap them with plastic wrap?
In addition to no. Generally, I don't leave them in a full round. Generally, I'll cut them in half and use the tin foil.
And if you're storing it outside, do you put it under a tarp or no?
Yes.
You do. Well, you're saying yes now. Come on.
Why are you using aluminum foil at all? Why aren't you just anchor sealing?
The anchor seal is permeable. It'll let. There are two types of moisture in the wood. There's the free moisture that's located in the tubes of the wood, and then there's the moisture that's in the cells of the wood. So on a piece of wood, across the face grain, the wood will shrink roughly about 6%. On the side grain, the wood will shrink about 4%. Along the length, it doesn't shrink at all. So what happens to these half blanks is as they dry, because you've stopped with the aluminum foil, you've stopped all the moisture from coming out altogether. What happens is it dries through the side grain. And what happens is they become V-shaped. Now, I've done this on very big pieces, 24 inches in diameter, and kept them for 8-10 months. In fact, some of them moved down from Rhode Island with me 8 years ago. So it's something that I used to do. I don't do much of it anymore. Most of the wood that I turn is roughly about this size. I'm getting old and frail. So there's no moisture coming through the tinfoil.
Does the plastic wrap ever cause any kind of fungus?
Yes, it does. And you can get mildewcide at the paint supply store. Mix it up with some water in a spray bottle, and you can apply that before you wrap in the plastic.
And what was the purpose of the sprinkles again?
The sprinkles just to keep a thicker layer of anchor seal on the end grain.
And you store most of your wood outside? Is that what you're saying, or no?
Not anymore. I don't have an outside to store it in. Where I live is a mobile home park.
Okay.
And they've got rules and regulations of what you can and can't do.
Right.
But what I have done is the wood that I have dried in this fashion, or drying in this fashion, rough turned and put into a plastic bin. I have a couple of deck boxes that I filled with rough turn bowls. I have a big brute trash can that I fill with the bigger rough tin bowls. So that's the demo. It's done. But when I started turning, the bowls that I was turning were fairly thick and heavy. and I wanted to start to learn. I wanted to turn thinner bowls. So what I did was I took a class with Johannes Mikkelsen, which is where the hat comes from, and we spent the weekend up in Vermont, my wife and I. And the first hat that I turned, he would sell you anything. And if you wanted to turn 2 hats, you could, or if you wanted to turn a full-size hat and the mini hat out of the core, you could do that at no extra cost. But I wanted to turn 2 full-size hats. The first hat I turned was a bonnet for my wife for taking up the time to go up to Vermont to turn these hats. And what I was interested in this time is that he cold forms these hats after they're turned. They're turned as a full circle. They look like Amish hats. They're pretty flat brimmed with a round top. He's got a form that squeezes the crown to bring it to oval, and he has, once he's got it in the form, he'll wrap rubber bands around it to curl up the brim. Further to that, I discovered madrone burl. This is madrone root burl, and it just, for me, that's the tickle. Right there is the shape that these assume. Now, I didn't form this at all. As this dried, this is the shape it took all by itself. So for me now, with this green cherry that we've got, this is a piece of it. This is turned as a square, flat, rim bowl with a slight curve in it, and you can see that the curve has become pretty acute. And not on this bowl, but on this bowl. This bowl I didn't do much with because of that. So it's
Still hold M&Ms.
But you can see, huh?
It's a good bowl. It'll still hold M&Ms.
So you can see how far it went oval just by drying. Now that bowl and this bowl were both turned on Sunday. So this one,
question. I've seen madrone with some severe warpage in it. Does it crack as well or not?
I haven't found that to be true. As long as you turn it thin enough, it'll morph without cracking. So this, after I did that bowl, the idea was to cold form that bowl like Mikkelsen did the hat. And realizing that I couldn't because of the way the bottom was turned, I turned another one. And this one, it's got a little give, but not a lot. So I think I'm going to have to steam it to actually bend it.
What is this?
That's what we learned tonight as decorative cherry. Ornamental cherry. Or oriental cherry.
Not the same.
Some people call it sweet cherry.
Sweet cherry.
There's so many different
cherry.
names. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really reluctant to use this bandsaw, but what Barry has, you got a little V shape to hold the round part, to cut across the round. But normally what I would do is just take this blank and set it on end, but it's wobbly. Try the other end. Oh, it's solid. So I would set this on the bandsaw table and run it through the saw. Now we can do that if you like. Okay.
Some enthusiasm from the crowd would be good. It keeps the demonstrator interested.
He stands in the back and says, yeah.
Far enough back that I won't get
No, I don't.
when you're cutting the long grain, you end up with long angel hair pasta shavings. So if on my bandsaw at home, those will clog up the wheels. So I have to cut this way. And I didn't bring that jig, but similar to what Barry made, if you have a long jig, you can lay it down on its side and cut across the end grain and get powdery sawdust rather than long shaving.
These two bowls are from the same tree, right?
Sorry?
The two bowls, the near leaf funnel and the green bowl, are those from the same tree?
Same lot. Okay, so I have a series of these little plastic templates that I use to take the corners off so I know that it'll be within a circle. To keep your fingers out of the saw blade is to rest your hand on the table so that it doesn't move forward if the wood splits or if the saw blade comes through faster than you expect. Does anybody have a ruler?
Should be something in the toolbox. Check the toolbox.
Angelo, you done with it?
Yeah. So that's roughly on center between the two sides. So this is a 1/4 inch drill.
Can I ask why you don't use the circle to do the center? To find the center? The same paper circle?
Because what I did is I just roughly cut the corners. Could put this back on here
Yeah, that's what I mean.
and use it to find center,
Okay.
but I didn't.
Okay.
So do we want to turn it or we want to go home?
Turn.
Turn it. Okay. Before we turn it, we'll talk about the tools. For me, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos. I know a lot of these people personally, and I'm interested in the grinds that they use. Stuart Batty uses a 40-40 grind. He floats the bevel, he doesn't rub the bevel. So this is close to a 40-40 grind.
Can you describe the 40-40 grind thing?
Sure, the 40-40 grind is the long cutting edge of the bowl gouge is 40 degrees off the flute. The bevel angle is 40 degrees from the from the edges of the gouge. Because this is not quite 40-40 because it's a little more blunt than Stuart Batty's. His are more like almost like a spindle gouge. And if you notice, he uses a bottom gouge at the bottom of his bowls because he can't turn the corner with that gouge.
Angelo, what do you mean by float?
Okay. Alan Lacer says you rub the bevel. So you rub the bevel.
Right.
That brings the whole bevel edge in contact with wood, and that's where you get your control of the cutting edge.
Right.
It's a battle of levers.
But are you saying float is the same as ride? It's not.
Float is the same as ride, is the same as rub.
Okay.
Ride is Ellsworth. Okay, so this. Yeah. So.
Well, I've seen it's a little confusion in the terminology. I think the idea is they say float the bevel, meaning don't put so damn much pressure on the bevel, but put the bevel on the wood.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's important to say because we've seen a lot of new turners come into this club and they don't understand why those bruise marks won't come out of their wood when they sand it. It's because they've been riding the bevel or rubbing the bevel and their pressure's been inward instead of down on the tool rest, and that creates the burnishing that you'll never get rid of.
That's true, but additionally, the heel of the bevel, especially on this gouge, is sharp. That gouge, there's a secondary grind that takes that heel off. So you minimize that burnishing or that bruise mark, because those are harder to get out than poor tool marks. So this is a Trent Bosch gouge, and this is a combination, an asymmetrical grind. If you're watching Richard Raffin's videos, he talks about this asymmetric grind. Well, I don't know if that's new or it's something he invented, but this is Trent Bosch's version of an asymmetrical grind. And that, because it's such a steep bevel, is good at the bottom of the bowl because it places the tool handle where it's not out over the ways of the lathe.
Is that asymmetry developed by just grinding more on the one wing?
Yes.
Okay.
If you listen to Raffin, it's impossible to create his asymmetric grind without doing it freehand. Well, yeah, but I can come up with a reasonable facsimile using one way's jig. Now this is what I learned to turn with was an Irish grind. And David Ellsworth and Liam O'Neill have had an argument in the past of who invented this long grind. And I don't know the answer, but this is pretty typical. This is what I learned with the nose of the tool is very steep, so that you can start a cut out on the rim of the bowl, bring it around the fullness of the curve, and cut the bottom edge on the face joint, on the face grain. Okay, this is my reasonable facsimile of Raffin's asymmetric grind. It's still a little bit more blunt than Raffin would use, but I'm interested to see what these tools are, what the grinds are, and how they work for me. And I'm finding that steel, even carbon steel, is harder than wood. Revelation. So even a carbon steel tool will give you a fine cut. In fact, you can polish up a carbon steel tool and get a finer edge than you can on high-speed steel. Doesn't last as long, but it still cuts, and if that's the only tool you have, you don't have to go out and buy a $120 bowl gouge. So I've been collecting these tools over the years, and I'm saying, this one works, this one doesn't work. maybe because this one works better for me, it's because I've learned with this tool. So I'm trying to keep an open mind about it, but once you become a wood, yes?
I don't know if all yours were the same, but I know some bowl gougers are sold with like a parabolic flute,
Yeah,
and some are just a radius.
a U-shaped. Yeah, we can talk about that. Glazer. Yeah, this is a V flute from Glazer. So it's got steep sides with a very small radius at the bottom. I don't know if I have a round one. This also is this is a Glazer spindle tool, but it gives you the idea of what a U-shaped flute looks like, even in a bowl gouge. How about this one? This is robust. What I like about robust is that they grind the flat all the way through this tool steel, so that as you grind this tool shorter and you have to put your one-way jig, you don't have to fiddle with it on the round part. It's got a flat already there for you. So this is close to a 40-40 grind.
I will just say about Robust,
Yeah.
their tools are shorter than Thompson's.
Okay.
So that may be why they put the flat, so that you could grind it down and actually use the end of the tool, because it's significantly shorter, maybe 1.25 inches shorter than sort of Doug Thompson's tool.
Let's see if I got a Thompson tool.
So a question for the folks who've been
I
turning
think
for
this
a
is
while.
Thompson.
I mean, how much do you actually lose with grinding off the end? In the couple of years I've been turning, why, maybe a couple of thousandths have gone off the end with sharpening?
How often do you sharpen your tool?
Well,
Yeah, you're either not
Okay,
turning a lot
first
or
of all,
it's,
what I started to say earlier was that once you become a professional wood turner, you may not be getting the income that you need from wood turning, so you become a tool salesman. And the job of a tool salesman is to sell you the next best tool, regardless. So I have some money. I won't ever live long enough. My son won't live long enough to use all of the tool steel that I have. So for me, it's an informational thing. This is a I think it's a Thompson spindle gouge.
Could you give access ones away to turners of your acquaintance?
I could do that. and I haven't done that. I don't do them anymore because they don't ever come back.
That's the idea.
They're one-way tools. Okay, so this is a Glazer screw chuck. By the way, you can still buy Glazer tools. You may not be able to buy the full range of Glazer, but you can buy their tools.
Is he a turner himself?
Yes, he was a turner, but he was also a tool maker. He was professionally a tool maker. I think I need a 5/16 drill.
Yeah, good.
Do we have one?
Probably in the toolbox.
Let's see if I got this. Oh, this is not cool. Okay, so the bowls that I have here, this little one here that I've asked you not to handle is from the Mid-Atlantic Woodturning Symposium, turned by Michael Hoslap. Every time I pick it up, I crack it. So I'm asking you all not to handle it. This is Stuart Batty. And you can see his tool can get you down to here, but it can't get you across the face grain. Richard Rath. Raffin, if you watch enough of his videos, you'll see that his designs, his tools, and his technique are all geared to pushing production out the door. So you're welcome to come up and handle these. If you want to pick up the hat and try it on, pick it up by the long grain. Don't pick it up with one hand on the end grain because the brim will break. But you're welcome to take something. So this is a quarter.
Yeah, I handle fine. No, super good. Break.
According to Ellsworth.
Oh, yeah, inside. Yeah. Just like that. Now this one.
Just like the wind today.
That's a spare battery. Of course, that could be dead too.
You promised you wouldn't do that.
Pardon?
You promised you wouldn't play that trick today.
Did you get enough?
I guess we're done.
Got it going now.
Okay, so if you're watching Richard Raffin videos, he'll go at this without bringing the tailstock up into play. Do we have a tailstock? Anybody?
You mean a live
Center?
Yeah, right there.
Oh, this is it. Here it is. Because when I first started turning, I turned in a garage and I had a Delta DL40. It was 40 inches long, but it had a very narrow footprint. In fact, it didn't flare out even like this. You got to sharpen your lamp if you're going to turn with a lamp. But the DL40 was such a narrow footprint. If I put a round blank on it like this, I'd chase it across the garage as it moved. Like this.
Just one with a crank back there.
Yeah. I don't know how to sharpen lamps, but I'm sure they make a jig for it.
Barry does.
What's that?
Barry does.
Barry knows that?
Not yet.
Wait till next month.
So this is what we learned is decorative cherry tonight, and it flies apart. So you guys are right in the firing line. So this is that 9/16 inch spindle gouge from Glazer.
It's got anchor seal on it.
Oh, you like the sprinkles?
With his hat.
Yeah.
I feel like Darth Vader because I'm on the dark side.
You want that light on behind you?
Sure, thank you. So I couldn't bring this tool rest any closer to the wood because it was hitting the banjo. But now that that's over with. So usually one of the first things that I do is turn this foot so that if I strip out the screw, I've got another place to mount the blank. I'm using the left side of the edge to take a peeling cartridge.
Using a ball gouge or a spindle gouge?
This is spindle gouge. It's a Vic Mark 120, 100. Pardon? Okay, so you can use this long edge to take a shear cut, a shear scrape. And you can see the difference in the graining than greening. So I'm bringing the point closest to me in contact with the wood, and I'm gauging where that is at the other side. Not bringing that in contact with the wood because it flips over on your finger. And I've been told that it really hurts, but so now I'm going to go for the tenor. 3/8 finger gouge. Cut it in at a little bit of an angle. And I want to get rid of all of the bark here. Now you see how wet this is. It's spitting at it. That's a shear cut. It's the long edge of the finger gouge. I'll clean up this corner a little bit. Some more. And let's see. Oh yeah, shear scraping. Okay, shear scraper, slightly rounded, skew, also a shear scraper. Now the action of the tool is not to have, it's a very light cut. It's not white knuckle. And you can see the quality of the shavings coming off. The skew is the first negative rate scraper. Also, if you bring it up on a 45-degree angle, it's also a shear scraper. Okay, so I won't belabor that point, but we'll get to wet sanding. On these little bowls that you're seeing, there's a number of them over there in the wood pile. If you want one, take one home, throw a buck in the jar, because I'll make more. So this is wet dry silicon carbon wet dry sandpaper. Let's start off with 120.
Is that just water?
Just water, yeah. You can use oil. Somebody was using oil tonight. And don't think it's really stick them. But I usually have a spray bottle of water that I can add water as I go. And just run it through the grits. That was 120. How are we doing for time?
8 after.
8 after 9?
Yep.
Oh, do I have to go home now?
You want to go home, but you can't stay here.
Okay, well, all right. Well, you just run it up through the grits. That's the idea. Do we want to turn the inside? I'm okay with it.
Go for it.
Sure. Please.
Angelo, you don't wet sand your finished dry pieces.
You can.
Do you?
If I have a dry piece that I want to wet sand, I'll use oil rather than water.
What kind of oil?
Boiled linseed oil.
And you wet sand primarily to keep the dust down?
Yes. And no. It wets the grain, and it. I'm looking for 2 little Tommy bars. There's one. Oh. Tommy bar with a wooden handle.
There's one down below.
That one. Thank you.
You ever had them break free? Turn it on like that?
No. What I have done with these, with this tenon, is shear the tenon right up the bowl. So, like I said, you guys are right in the line of fire. Oh, the jaws will leave a mark if you've sanded. If you've sanded the outside of your bowl, then you put it straight in the chuck. The jaws will stain the wood. Steel in wet wood will give you blue stain, and so will the chuck.
That's just wax paper.
A piece of plastic, actually Ziploc.
What kind of speed have you got on the
What kind of speed do I have here?
Yeah.
454.
One minor point, you can really only do that bit of plastic with a dovetail jaw.
Yeah.
Like a Vic mark. You can't do that with a one-way with a standard grip.
You can do that with one way, but it has serration.
It has to be the special
And it
profile.
usually cuts through the plastic.
One way also makes jaws
They do.
after years.
So it's a combination.
No, they don't have ripples. There's dovetail.
But they do have their special profile.
Yeah, they have
That
that
has that
little
combination at the end. It's a handy little feature.
There's some on the table up front. Some tools up there if you're looking. Or the table.
So the entry cut into the wood is the flute is completely closed and it never bring the nose of the tool vertical. So that allows you to scribe a shoulder. Once you scribe the shoulder, you can open the flute. The other way that you can start the cut is to leave it slightly open. Take a keying cut until you've established the shoulder. Once you have the shoulder, to rub the bevel, ride the bevel, float the bevel. Once you've established the cut, come out with the bevel rubbing, just move the tool over and bring it back into the wheel, and the bevel will automatically start to go. Okay, so the first time I ever saw a one-way lathe was in Greensboro, North Carolina. And Sukol, what's his name? Sukol, the Alaskan guy, and John Jordan. John Jordan was turning inboard, Sukol was turning outboard. And they each had a trash can on either side, and they were aiming for the trash can. At that time, they only made 2046, and they were just under $5,000 each. And they had made, I think, 19 of them before they came to the show. And I was looking for a bowl lathe. I wanted to buy a bowl lathe by Dale Nick. Or you won't be able to get cars such as because I could build the sandbox by myself and put the lathe parts on top. So I pitched and moaned about so much about this one-way lathe. I always said, "Why don't you go buy the damn thing?" Okay. So by the time she said that, they had sold all 19 lathes. So I had to wait 6 months. So that catches when I run the cut into the step that I left behind before. That was a legitimate catch.
Is that the 4040 they're using there?
No, this is the big, like David Ellsworth. I'll check the depth. That's on the bottom. width's that longer right across the base. Okay, so the thickness of the rim is about slightly less than a quarter, maybe 3/16. So you want to go thinner?
Sure, why not?
I brought this for a reason.
I can see through it from here.
It's about 1/8 of an inch now.
Hey, Angelo, when you're doing that like final cut for that thickness, are you watching the outside profile to try to match it with the tool, or are you watching your ledge thickness? How do you do that?
Well, what I'm looking at is both sides. One eye is looking at the outside, and one eye is looking at the inside. And I'm really judging, trying to judge where the tool is going as it's going down the side. Oh, I got this, yeah. A little bit of bark there.
And what's the purpose of the asymmetrical grind?
The asymmetrical grind is for coming in on the inside with the strong shoulder, and for shear cutting and roughing out on the outside. That long grind on the left side of the asymmetric grind doesn't do much for you on the inside.
It was a good run there on that last cut with your thinness and lead wood and everything else. Good job.
Thanks.
Do you ever pull cut with a shear coming from the center out to get that nice clean finish off? You use a scraper. Do you ever do it without the scraper, just with your bowl gouge, flip it around, and come back out?
It depends on the shape of the bowl. Sometimes you could, in a wide bowl like this, you can probably get across with a shear cut with your bowl gouge. But I find that I've got more control with a scraper than I do with the bowl gouge down deep. If it's any deeper than it is now, it's hard to get a bowl gouge to cut that far off the tool rest.
That's why I was asking about coming back the other way. Well, it's a pull shear. The only reason I ask that question is like when you're roughing green, you don't have to get that scraper finish cut, but you want to get it uniform just so that it dries a little better.
Yeah.
That's why I asked.
Yep, you're right, 100%. What you want to do is you want to get the thickness of the bowl at the bottom as thin as possible, because the tenon adds another dimension as it's drying. So in fact, that little bowl that I passed around, you can see that the tenon was thin enough that it went oval along with the rest of the bowl. So I don't know how, I can't really tell. There's the inside of the bowl is there. So it looks like I've got enough to make a cut. So I'll give it a shot, smooth it out and be done with it. Yeah? Just going to use this flat on the tool rest. Bump in the bottom. The best way to deal with that bump in the bottom, the pimple, the nipple, is to put the scraper down below it, drop the handle, and just come right up through it.
Good job.
Good job. A little thick on the bottom, but
How long would you wait to put a finish on a piece that green?
piece of screen. Well, if I leave it over, if the bottom were thinner and I left it overnight, it would dry enough to finish it the next day. Did we what? Did we get shavings up into the cheap seats? No.
Yeah. Yeah, just mine.
You paid extra for that.
Yes.
Okay.
I got in the splash zone, didn't I?
Right. Like Gallagher.
Right.
Anybody got any questions? I don't do windows.
No. But you almost predicted.
Yeah, almost. Thanks, Angelo.
Very nice. Thank you.
Oh, that's a souvenir?